All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Rocky Top Insider Instant Reaction Show. My name is Rick Butler, joined by Ryan Shumpert. As always, we are back in Knoxville, but as for the number one team in the nation, they fall in defeat to Florida in Gainesville tonight by 30 points. This was a final score of 73-43 in a game that Tennessee was just ice cold shooting from the floor in Gainesville. Tennessee finishes the game shooting just 21.4% from the floor and an abysmal 13.8% from three-point range, 4 of 29 from behind the arc. Ryan, what did you think about this game? I mean, Tennessee misses some open looks to start the game. Chaz Lanier, I believe, misses three-pointers to start the game, but man, that just sort of set Tennessee in a funk for what would turn into a blowout loss for Tennessee's first loss of the season.
Certainly the shooting numbers are what stands out the most, and you just ran them down. But I mean, really, Tennessee, I want to say, hit 2 threes in the final 2 or 3 minutes of the game. So it was from a 3-point shooting perspective, it was worse than that. And you were kind of joking in a group me. You weren't, we weren't sure if Tennessee was going to get the 10 made field goals. They ended up getting the 12. So it somehow was probably offensively even a little bit worse than the final numbers look.
No
and
kidding.
Even with that, 43 points, the lowest of the Rick Barnes era. Ironically, their second lowest, or the previous record, was a game they won 46 to, I believe, 44 against Auburn a few years ago in Knoxville. I'm sure a lot of people remember that game because of how ugly it was. But just a very, very bad night for Tennessee, and certainly a just horrific offensive performance.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I could go back and read through some of the stats. We know what they were, and if you watch the game, it was as bad as you saw it on TV. And if you didn't watch the game, well, Tennessee lost by 30 points. So things obviously had to go pretty bad. Ryan, at one point during halftime, I mean, I went to put my glasses on just to make sure that I was reading the stat sheet correctly. Tennessee had 15 points at half. I believe they put up, 28 points or so in the second half. But again, this was a game where it was just not Tennessee's night. And you've seen that around on social media a little bit, but man, sometimes you're just not going to shoot it. And in this situation, Tennessee did not have a go-to guy who could get them through some funks or get them through some stretches. I believe there was a 5-minute stretch in the first half where Tennessee went scoreless, and then an 8-minute stretch around the end of the game where, again, Tennessee just couldn't chip away. Game was obviously over by then at that point, but Tennessee didn't have a go-to player like that today. I don't know what let me see what Chaz Lanier's stats were for the night. 3 of 16 from the floor, 10 points, like you were saying right there, and then 1 of 9 from three-point range. No Tennessee player made more than 2 threes in the game. Lanier and Ziegler in with 10 points each, but that's what leads Tennessee. So when you don't have a go-to guy and everyone's just sort of slow to get going together, it's going to produce sort of one of these bad in a funk sort of shooting nights.
Yeah, I mean, Chaz was really bad tonight. By far the worst game he's played this season. And I think you kind of saw some of the concern about being able to score at the rim when shots aren't falling. Especially when, we kind of talked about it on Saturday and maybe even coming out of that game, Tennessee being able to rebound, get offensive boards was a big part of how they're going to be able to score. And Florida's a really good rebounding team, and they dominated Tennessee on the glass. And I think, to me, not to say that the shooting that poorly isn't a concern. So I think it's definitely a concern that it got that bad. Like, you're going to have bad shooting nights, but you can't let it get as bad as it got tonight for Tennessee. To me, it felt like the bad start affected them, and they lost their confidence. So you just can't have that. You got to find other ways to chip away and score. But I think, to me, the more pressing concern is just how they got dominated inside. 55-38 rebounding advantage for Florida. Florida scored 19 second chance points to 4 for Tennessee. It was just physically dominant inside. 40 points in the paint for Florida, 14 for Tennessee. And I think it was something I wrote it. It was something to the extent of Florida took, I can't find the number, but Florida took a ton of shots inside at the rim. 28 total shots at the rim. Tennessee took just 13. And so it was a struggle for Tennessee to get shots at the rim. And Florida did a good job of getting them. And I do think, now that's a little bit of a concern for Tennessee. Not just a massive one, but in a game where you saw Cade Phillips, he picked up 2 quick fouls. Tennessee had to play small a lot. You kind of saw Florida be able to get some switches, particularly on ball screen action, and either get offensive rebounds or throw the ball down low and get a bunch of easy buckets. And I think that, not that I don't think Tennessee didn't play hard. To me, I mean, if you're, I don't know why you would have still been watching if you didn't have to in the second half. I felt like Tennessee continued to play hard, but they did get physically. It felt like they got pushed around a lot, and to me, I think that's maybe more concerning or the most concerning thing from this game going forward.
Yeah, I think at one point Jimmy Dykes said in the broadcast late in the second half or so, he said, look, Tennessee is playing hard, but they're not playing well. And I thought that summed it up pretty well. I like what you said. You really kind of nailed that second point. But going back to your first point there, I like what you said in just that Tennessee looked rattled. And yes, they didn't really attack the basket too early and often in the first half, but they were getting some good looks from three-point range. I think this iteration of that Tennessee team, especially if it's Chaz Lanier with the ball in his hands, I think they're okay with taking those threes. But you're right. They just kind of got rattled, and there were times where the lights looked a little bright for stretches during this game. So I agree with you. There can be times where, hey, you're just not shooting well. Just guys aren't getting in rhythm. It's obviously very unfortunate when it happens to the entire team, and you don't really expect it to happen over a 40-minute stretch. But it was sort of that ability to just get rattled on the road, and it's especially kind of coming up just a couple weeks after that game where Tennessee fought like heck on the road against Illinois. So certainly an interesting game for Tennessee. Any other kind of thoughts on what we saw tonight, Tuesday night in Gainesville?
Yeah, I think just thinking about the offense, because there's not a guy that's just great at getting shots near the rim, or shots two-pointers as a whole. And Chaz Lanier certainly can hit some mid-range shots. And I think that will continue to be a concern for Tennessee when their offense isn't humming. Certainly they've shot the ball from two pretty well this season, and when their offense is humming, they're able to get a lot of looks and a lot of dump downs for dunks to the big men or alley-oops, stuff of that nature. But I think that's kind of where you talk about it compounding. Like Igor missed some easy shots early at the rim. Or easy shots probably not the right word, but shots you need to make at the end or at the rim. Good looks at the rim. Jordan Gainey missed good looks at the rim. And when you start the game shooting poorly from 3-point range, and then you do miss some of those looks at the rim, that getting easy ones I don't think is going to be a challenge for Tennessee on nights when offense doesn't look good. It just felt like that compounded. So if you want a positive, and this is going to be a funny thing to say given what I talked about, Tennessee getting dominated inside, I thought Felix Okpara played a pretty good game. I thought, especially first half, rebounded the ball really hard, finished some easy stuff around the rim, shot free throws well, and not that he was completely blameless or anything, but a lot of Florida dominating at the rim, like I kind of alluded to earlier. A lot of switches where Okpara got out guarding guys on the perimeter and things opened up down low. So he was a guy that I thought gave Tennessee some good minutes tonight, but few and far between. And I guess if I'm looking at one last thing, Chaz Lanier is obviously the main guy, and then Jordan Gainey is going to have to do some scoring for Tennessee on the perimeter. Those guys combined to shoot 4 of 27 tonight. Tennessee won't win any games this year when that's the case.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, Tennessee just got cold quick and could not overcome that obstacle throughout the game. Played good defense at times, but eventually if shots aren't falling, it's going to take a little bit of a hit on you mentally. Ryan, we have a big episode of the RTI Press Pass coming up tomorrow, which we will break down this Tennessee basketball team a little bit more. But one thing that I do want to ask you, so I want you to be able to tease a little bit of your answer right now if you can, but just what does this say about this Tennessee basketball team? 14-0 up to this point. Had some nice road wins, had some nice non-conference wins, obviously had a dominating win over Arkansas to start out SEC play last Saturday, but then again, a 30-point blowout loss in a game to Florida. Just sort of, again, tease your answer because I want to break it down a little bit more on the press pass tomorrow, but just what does this say about Tennessee if there is a lot to say right now? Maybe there's not a lot to be. Obviously, again, we've talked about it. It's just one of those games where nobody shot the ball well, but what do you think a little bit of that answer?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say just from one game. That's the nature of a sport where you play 35 games before the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
I think it says Tennessee's a flawed team, and I think it says Tennessee's not the best team in the country. But I mean, I think we kind of knew we knew Tennessee was a flawed team, and I've been saying for a while that I think Auburn's better than Tennessee. Maybe Tennessee's not the second or third best team in the country, which I probably would have said that they were before this game. But we'll see. I think you learn in time, and most teams have some lopsided losses that look bad. Certainly, this one worse than most. Certainly, this one worse than Tennessee at A&M last year, or Tennessee in Gainesville 2 years ago. Kind of similar. I think Tennessee was number 2 in the country the first midweek of February when they lost that one. So I don't know. Maybe I'll marinate on it and have a little bit better answer tomorrow. But I think it's kind of tough to say, what just one game means or says about a team.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I don't think there has to be an answer. And again, we will break down that question a little bit more tomorrow on the RTI Press Pass. Make sure you find that wherever you can find your podcast and right here on YouTube. Ryan, Tennessee, it'll still be another 8 days before they return to the Food City Center for an SEC game. That'll be against Georgia next Wednesday night. In the meantime, Tennessee's got to bounce back on the road. They got to figure out how to do that when they go down to Austin, a place that is obviously very familiar to Rick Barnes, in a game next Saturday night. Will you be there? I think you have plans on heading to my Lone Star State. Obviously not necessarily my neck of the woods, but you will be there right on Saturday as Tennessee looks for a bounce back effort on the road. Not always the easiest place to do it, but Tennessee's going to have to, figure out how to buckle down and make it happen on the road.
Yeah, definitely, and I will be there. Glad that they're going to Austin, not your neck of the woods in Dallas. Might be pretty tough getting to your neck of the woods with some of the weather it looks like this week. So,
Yeah.
I think you kind of came in this week knowing or feeling like Tennessee needed to go 1-2 for sure, or 1-1, split these two games in conference play, and certainly we all knew Florida was going to be a harder one, but that doesn't mean Texas is going to be an easy matchup either. So, we'll see how the Vols fare in Austin.
There are certainly a lot of reactions going around on Twitter right now, but hey, at the end of the day, it is one loss in a long SEC season. Tennessee's going to have opportunities to bounce back from this, but obviously not the way they wanted to start this early slate of SEC action. Again, with a 30-point, 73-43 loss to number 8 Florida in Gainesville. I don't know if that's going to get forgotten, but obviously Florida is an extremely talented team. Hard to believe there's maybe even 7 teams who are better than them in the sport of college basketball. So Tennessee's going to have a lot of work to do in between now and when they go to Austin. But again, endless opportunities still remain on the table as just 2 games into SEC play have elapsed. That is Ryan Shumpert. You can follow him on Twitter at rshump00. My name is Rick Butler. You can follow me at Rick_Butler. But again, just make sure you're checking in RockyTopInsider.com each and every day as we bring you the latest Tennessee news, notes, and coverage. We will have live on-site, boots-on-the-ground coverage in Austin coming up next Saturday as Tennessee looks for a bounce-back win against Rick Barnes' former program, the Texas Longhorns, again in Austin. Thank you very much for listening to the RTI Instant Reaction Show today. We'll see you back to the next one.